Hello and welcome to the NJQP podcast. This is Isaac. This is episode 17. In this episode, Jess and I discuss the organization known as the Iguan Dao and its relationship to Taoism and energy gates. We also talk about feeling energy outside yourself after you've dissolved and sort of do an overview about the standing practice and how to integrate that into a daily thing. All right. There's some stuff on our Patreon. Eric Peters wrote a little piece about spiraling. You can check that out. Jess has his walking program, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff. So check it out if you haven't already. And hope you enjoy the episode. Take care.
Welcome back to the NJQP podcast with Isaac and Jess. So we're moving through opening the energy gates of your body, and we've reached the point in the late 70s where the author is doing a lot of studying of Taoism. And he later talks about becoming a Taoist priest. It says here in the book that he was able to devote time to studying meditation with Taoists, and then in Hong Kong. And then in the late 70s back in Taiwan, he's devoting 12 hours a day to the internal arts and immersing himself in Taoist meditation, developing a sharp interest in processing bound emotional energy. So we've always found that an intriguing part of his life's journey in learning Qigong is how his experience with Taoism. So we decided to pull something from one of his other books, from the Taoist meditation book, his most recent book they just put out. And he goes more in depth into Taoist priesthood training. It says here, I wasn't even interested in spirituality at that point in my life. As a martial artist and a healthy, sexually active young man, celibacy was the furthest thing from my mind. However, my teacher Wang Shujin, to my astonishment, completely demolished my cultural stereotypes. I was ushered into a world where priests were not encouraged to renounce their sexual nature, quite the opposite. Through Master Wang's personal introduction to this Taoist community, I began to explore esoteric Taoism. So he talks about all the different types of how it was different from what he thought of as religious, beliefs at the time. And he goes on to what talks about the difference between how priest is as a term is used in East and West. He says here the word priest is used completely differently in the East than in the West. In China, training to become a Daosher, literally spiritual teacher, the Taoist word for priest, involves total immersion in multiple Taoist energy arts. A Daosher is, first and foremost, a master of internal energy, or qi. At each stage of development, an initiate is required to undergo practical, in-depth training during which he or she must embody and demonstrate the ability to work with qi within his or her body, and later with the qi of others. An elaborate sequence of spiritual rituals and vows is involved. And then he goes on to talk about all the different types of studying you have to do. You have to learn texts, you learn qigong, meditation for healing arts such as herbs, spiritual martial arts, that includes meditating while you're doing martial arts, performing and assisting with exorcisms, spiritual midwifery, death or dying practices, rites and rituals, all aspects of sexuality. So there's a massive amount and he says that he went on a 7-year course of study to be ordained as a Taoist priest. And so, I don't know much about this type of thing, but it does seem to me quite a different type of priest than we think of here in Judeo-Christian belief system, where a priest is more about memorizing texts and being sort of a spiritual counselor to people, and especially believing the right things rather than necessarily practicing specific training,
I had a professor that said, there's three types of Taoism. There's scholarly, there's religious, and there's martial, right? And that there's, I was practically jumped out of my seat when she said martial. I was like, yes. But that idea that there's always, or not always maybe, but for a very long time, there's been these three distinct sort of, things, and they have a lot of crossover. And so, for example, Taoist health practices have a lot of crossover with Taoist meditation practices, and meditation practices have some crossover with like Bagua and stuff like that. So I think Wang Shujing was part of the, that group, the Iguan Dao, right? So that's probably where, what he's talking about. And they have sort of a public face, right? Like most churches, you have a public face, you have a private face, and you have a inner sanctum, right? And that on the surface, it's about ritual and, ancestor worship and stuff like that. On that more inner level, it's about meditation, development, things like that. And then I don't know what happens on in the inner sanctum, but
right. There's, Asian religions often have esoteric practices. There's people in the group who do more esoteric stuff. And I think Western religions have it too, but it's not that well known. It's not really that well accepted. Most churches don't have anything.
And he says, he talks about how there are some teachers that he had that he can't talk about, that because of their association to this group, you're not supposed to say who, you're not supposed to just say who they are.
Right. On your business, basically.
So, that's what all secret societies, I think there's a certain, it's like you need certain clearance before you can go around talking about it in public.
Yeah, that's definitely different than a Western version of what a priest is all about.
But there's a well-known sort of relationship between the martial art community in Taiwan and the Iguan Dao. Like, for example, both Wang Shujing and Zhang Zhongfeng were members, right? So
right. Oh yeah. As well as yeah.
And that's two of the three branches of Bruce's, two of his three teachers come from that group. So
it's definitely influential on all the different martial arts that come out of Taiwan.
Yeah.
And it's definitely an interesting little piece of history about how all these different teachers are connected.
So, some people might treat it like, oh, that's just that's grandpa's folk religion or whatever, and not really have it be part of their training. Other people may embrace it in terms of, they like the spiritual aspect of it, and, they practice the martial arts and Qigong stuff. Definitely. And, I think with Bruce's stuff, it's heavily influenced by that, even though it may not exactly be the same stuff. It's like there's, a lot of crossover.
Right. It's definitely influential. And, and so we wanted to dig a little deeper into that. So we pulled out the old Pakwa Chang newsletter, February 1992, from back in the good old days. And so this article is talking about Wang Shujin, Taiwan, southern Taiwan.
That issue just came out when I went. So the first class I went to, that somebody had a fresh copy of that one, and it was like, look, it's Bruce's teacher. Da, 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 da.
Oh my God, yeah. These were great issues with tons of cool history and stuff.
Getting one of those was like if you got your hands on a copy, it was like,
that was like a Christmas gift.
Yeah.
It was so hard to find stuff.
So hard to find.
So it says here that in an interview with one of Wang's students, Huang Qinsheng from southern Taiwan, it says here, few people realize that Wang Shujin was a member of a religious movement. Can you explain a little bit? Wang Shujin was a principal leader of the Iguan Dao religion. He and some other mainlanders of some distinction were prime movers in spreading the movement through Taiwan and Japan. So what is Iguan Dao? Iguan means consistent or unwavering. Dao means the way or path. Iguan Dao is more a philosophy than a religion, since we believe in all five major religions, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, Islam, and Christianity, as different expressions of the same universal and unwavering Dao. Ironically, because we believe that each religion is equally great and true, we have been uniformly reviled and persecuted by all. Therefore, for many dynasties, Iguan Daoists have learned not to stick their neck out too far lest they get chopped off. That's how we got the label of a secret society. Iguan Dao promotes peace and harmony among all peoples, at times a dangerous concept. That's pretty cool.
Don't kill us. Don't slaughter us, please.
Yeah. They made the mistake of agreeing with all the major religions, which caused all the other religions to come after them and persecute them.
It's like, what?
That's unfortunate. But
How
that's what you get.
How dare you agree with us?
Right. So then it goes on just to briefly scan some of the practices that the Iguan Dao does. And like, who knows if this has anything to do with, the group Kumar was with, but sounds typical of what the type of practices he'd be learning as a Taoist priest. Iguan Daoists have always used Taoist type internal exercises. We believe that sitting meditation is essential for developing a sitting center. Without internal calm, you cannot control your emotions or actions. In fact, sitting is actually more important in developing Bagwajang skills than walking. And there is really nothing special you have to do. Just sit quietly and empty your mind. It is so easy that no one bothers to do it. Everyone expects everything to be so complicated and unattainable. What a pity. It's all at your fingertips.
I fucking love that.
And then he quickly mentions, that's sweet.
I fucking love that.
And he hits on Wang Shijin a little bit here. He said, after the excesses of the Japanese during the war with China, Wang Shijin was interested in trying to steer them away from their aggressive outlook, which he thought was not really inherent in their true nature. So in the 1960s, he began making trips to Japan to teach martial arts and Iguan Dao philosophy. He showed repeatedly through demonstration how strong, aggressive karate attacks could be easily defeated by avoiding or absorbing the blows, and how developing unseen internal power does not invite attack. Bagua is that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot.
Pretty cool, man.
There's videos of him, in Japan, letting people punch him in the belly and basically just laughing it off, so.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely stories of his challenge matches in Japan making a point about the superiority of internal martial arts of China.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. But anyways, that's a little bit about that Iguan Dao. That is an important part of martial arts, coming to the West.
For sure.
So moving on to the Opening the Energy Gates chapter of the book. Here on page 74, we're below the feet and above the head. Your energetic body extends below your feet and above your head. Over time and with practice, your energy body will grow in size and strength, but it will still fluctuate. So he's talking about where you try to feel beyond your actual self. You dissolve down from the bottom of your feet and up from the top of your head to sort of contact the area, the energy of the world around you and your interface with it, kind of. So you try to feel as far as your energy can go, which is a pretty subtle thing to feel.
Yeah. Well, this is, we've talked about the bodies and, a little bit about spiraling energy body. And essentially that's where this is, this is now the end of the energy gates part of standing and moving into the next phase of it. Right. So energy gates starts and ends with, being a little bit beyond your field. Right. And then the next stuff starts with what do you do with that field? I think this is, it's like with this one, you can just you can make that the end of it, right? And that's just your practice is, just going down and then feeling the field around you and letting it kind of just, become stable. Or you can go and you can do, more advanced practices. But
I mean, how do you feel beyond your own body at all? I think that's what I'd wonder when you're starting out.
So the classic one is you put your hands together and like feel the space between your hands or run your hand up and down your arm and you feel that warmth, right? And from that you sort of go, okay, well, I can feel that. So if I take it away from, not pointing at my hand and just feel it outside my body, eventually it's just practice. It's, there are other things like using other senses like your hearing to get a sense of, okay, well, if you listen to the space around you, at least you have one of your senses is out there. So that's something. And then you can kind of, fill in the gap. But being close to someone or having someone who has strong energy put their hand on you or near you, I think is sort of the best way to feel it is to have someone who can feel it sort of do it to you, and then you go, oh, I feel something. But yeah, the one with, just feeling the space between your palms and trying to let that space between your palms kind of extend beyond that, and then do the same thing with your feet and, your head.
And it's definitely, it's a testament to the challenge of the set. You're trying to feel inside yourself, and at the same time, it's asking you to feel slightly beyond yourself. That's really going to stretch your consciousness. It's going to stretch your intention and your awareness, and cause you to leave your comfort zone, because that's not easy to do at first.
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift for a lot of people. The idea that, you exist outside of your body, as much as you exist inside of it. And there are parallels in, the meditation stuff with the 8 bodies, things like that. But I mean, and really in this case, it's mostly just about there is an energy that surrounds everything and everyone. You can call it gravity, you can call it whatever you want. And it's just about being able to have a subtle awareness of that. For example, the most practical use of it would be something like, if you can dissolve the space outside your body and someone's near you who's got shitty energy or is pissed off or something, you can dissolve that energy before it gets to you. And that, that way you don't have to absorb it. Or say you're a body worker, right? And you're working on somebody, and, you can't help but absorb it when you're touching someone. So that's, part of the process. But at the end of it, you could use that sense of dissolving to release it. And the part where you go beyond yourself is essentially where, again, if you believe in such things, the energy that you release goes outside of you, mixes with the energy in the, ether out there, and comes back. And, it gets cleaned, if you will, by the stuff outside of you. And then it comes back, pure, right? So the releasing beyond yourself is like the final stage of the car wash, right? It's the, make sure you get the soap off the very bottom of the wheels or whatever,
And, it's just one of those things you do little by little, and you don't stress if it doesn't come right away. It's for some people, they're super sensitive, others aren't, but we're all swimming around in the same world,
Right. And some people are more sensitive to it. Some people are less sensitive to it. It doesn't really matter. I don't think, you can do it poorly. You could, and still get some benefit. The point, I think, is more the idea that, to get out of the idea that you stop at your skin, that there is some part of you that is bigger than, the physical tissue. It's what acupuncture works on, the same principle, essentially. I mean, it's just, they use a different roadmap, but it's the same, forest.
So looking at the next section here, opening the gates, a lesson plan. So he maps out, exactly what a practice session could consist of, just basic advice about don't overdo it, practice each lesson for a couple days.
And that's the roadmap I was just talking about, that, other schools have different maps, they have different paths or whatever, it's the 1,000 paths to the same peak, it's like, ultimately it's just about getting it to where you can feel your body and your mind and your body are linked, and, how you get there is how you get there. But
so he suggests you dissolve, when you start practice, you go and just lightly dissolve all the ones you previously opened. So you kind of, quickly move through what you've done up till that point. Then you spend most of your time working on a new spot that you're just reached, so you can put the majority of your effort there. But anything you run across, you go ahead and just give it your best to dissolve. And he says, especially when you move from one place to the next, you try to move through that space slowly and capture everything along the way, kind of. So when you move from the crown to the third eye, be sure to dissolve the forehead along the way. Or when you go from the hips to the knees, be sure to dissolve the thighs. So he's saying, don't just jump from one spot to another. You slowly do your best to trickle it down and move it through the leg bit by bit till you reach the knee.
It's a connect the dots, right? Like, I don't know if you did those things when you were a kid, but that's like dots on a page, and you connect them and it makes a picture or whatever. That's what it's like. It's there's these points, and these are the checkpoints along the way, right? But you have to track through, everything between the checkpoints. And so in the book, in the practice, you start with just a general sense of dissolving everything. And then you go to, okay, now I'm going to do points. Because the general ability to dissolve is, that's the safety mechanism. So you start with that. Then as you start to go into individual points, it's like each time you do a point, say it's your forehead or whatever, you would do down to your forehead, sort of whatever, like you say, just kind of half-ass it or whatever. Then you get to the point you want to work on and you focus on that one. And then when you finish on that one, you quickly do the rest of it all the way down to the feet. So you never just kind of do like one thing and stop. You always want to kind of finish it up, but you can mess with the proportion as much as you want, so you can spend as much or as little time on any one spot as you feel necessary. So, because as you're learning it, you're going to have to say, okay, I'm at this part of my body and I need to, there's a lot to deal with or whatever. And then you're going to get to some other parts that are going to be relatively easy. So you have to kind of go bit by bit. Once you can do it, and you're fairly comfortable with the process, then it's more like, how much do I want to, it's your sort of discretion in terms of, which part do I want to play with today, or, what's bugging me, or, just, it's like, just what do you feel like doing?
Right. And so he gives a list of, single lessons that you work your way through. So the first one's byway, the crown of the head. And then you go, the eyes down, working your way down through the body. At a certain point, lesson 13 is the Dantian and the Mingmen. So that's that horizontal plane in your belly.
Yeah. But see, to me, that's like, yes, you could do those as each one is a lesson, right? Or you could think of that whole thing as the lesson, and that's just the checklist that you're going through as you go down. So it works both ways. It's like,
right. He says once you do all of them individually, then you combine them all into one session.
All right. So I'm jumping
start
ahead
from the top of the head, go down one level at a time. Yeah, I mean, of course, you're going to learn them individually, then you put it together in one session. As like you said, you work, each part you may spend a little extra effort on.
The phrase he used to throw around was separate and then combine, right? So first you do it as an individual thing, and you separate all the different parts, and then you lump it all together into one thing, which really fucks with people because, we like things to be in a certain order or structure, and then we like that structure to be the same when you move to the next thing. And a lot of this stuff, it doesn't like always track that, the things you did before are going to be exactly the way you did them later on. And for a lot of people, that creates this sort of internal frustration because they're like, but I wanted it to be this, I was comfortable with it being this way. And when I change it, it's not comfortable anymore. And so dissolving in a, on a big level is like, how comfortable do you want to get with your body and what's inside of it? Because that's going to mean encountering a lot of stuff that probably isn't all that great in the beginning. And so you have to do things at those stages, to that's the work, that's the chi work part of it, is that you have to struggle with some of this stuff And the more fucked up you are, the worse it's going to be, basically. And so, Bruce would always talk about the healing crisis, that your body goes through this, like, as things are releasing, sometimes it's as bad as when they happened, or if you're releasing a bunch of stuff from a lot of time in a very quick period of time, that's fun too, so I think, the thing is, like, having the checklist just keeps you on track, and you don't, when things get a little weird, you don't freak out. It's like I can just check the map. Where am I on the map? Kind of, it's a very useful piece of, that's probably the only thing in terms of, like, memorization of points that I think, Bruce ever really teaches. But it's like, you've got to be able to, like, at least, let's say 90% of them go through your body and hit all those points. If you kind of forget to go to your shoulder, or, like, once in a while, it's not a big deal. But, if every time you practiced, you skipped your neck, right? And you never went through your neck, well, that neck's never going to really wake up. So, having the checklist kind of forces you into going into all the uncomfortable places as well as the comfortable places.
Sounds good to me, man.
All right. Well, that's a wrap.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Cheers.
Hey folks, Isaac again. Just a reminder to like and subscribe, tell a friend about the podcast, and we now have a website, the NJQP podcast.com, so you can check that out. All right, take care.